Giving free one-sided therapy to the stars of reality. It's Rachel and Kacie with CBT and the TV. CBT and the TV.
All right. Hello, darlings, dears, and fellow queers, and welcome back to CBT in the TV. As always, I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I am Rachel, not Kacie.
And this week we will be going over Dance Moms, Season 1, Episode 9. Oh, Ballerinas to Showgirls is the title of the episode from Lifetime. It has a different title on YouTube if you watch it there, and we're calling it Candy Crapples and Shit Showgirls because to me, that is the only appropriate way to address this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild ride, y'all. If you've seen it, you know. If you haven't seen it, prepare
Get
yourselves. Yes.
Buckle up.
Yeah, but before we do that, let's give ourselves a little bit of time to ramp up and visit Rachel and Kacie's Jar of Fun. Our question of the day is, what would the title of your memoir be if/when you write one?
So I joked a little bit with a friend the other day. She was hearing a little bit about what's been going on in my life and just the last year or so and just all of the crazy chaos. And she's like, I'm just going to call you Joe. So it would probably be something like Job related. Probably something along the lines of like, just call me Job, or a bit Jobish.
Nice. Mine stems from a conversation I had when I was working in reception. I was like the lead receptionist at a multi-care level retirement community, and our HR person was always telling me, she's like, oh, you're so organized. Oh, you're so, I was not organized. I had a really micromanagey boss or supervisor, and if I didn't have all my ducks in a row, it didn't just affect me, it affected all of the other receptionists. And you can yell at me, I expect that you yell at me, but if you yell at my friends, I'm gonna have a really hard time with that, especially if it's something that I caused. So I told her, I am not responsible, I'm just terrified of consequences. So since then I have joked that my memoir, if I ever wrote a memoir or someone did a documentary on my life or something for whatever reason, or if an alien is watching my life as a TV show, the title should be not responsible, just terrified of consequence. All right, before we get into the nitty gritty, let's check in with our drinks and snacks, and we invite all of our listeners to hydrate themselves and eat along with us because your body needs taking care of. Rachel, what you got with us today?
Popcorn.
Oh, you're ready for a show. Got it. Putting the show
and
in Showgirls.
And apple juice because I am an adult.
Yes.
But I also have my emotional support water bottle with me. So
very good. I have some Little Bites party cake muffins because I too am an adult. My emotional support energy drink and my emotional support water bottle. All right, it doesn't look like we can stall any longer. We're gonna have to get into this. It is day 1, and we open the episode with the team, of course, already in Las Vegas. Like we said last week, they were not going home. They're continuing on the road. They're on that party train that Kathy was talking about. Abby tells us that they are here to compete in the Thunderstruck competition. I think this is the first and potentially the only time we go to a Thunderstruck competition.
Yeah, the name
definitely. I think it's the only one we go to this season, but I think it might be in all of Dance Moms. Abby calls the girls in for Pyramid, and we see the Pyramid set up the traditional way once again. That's one of the nice things about being on the road is they don't have the damn chalkboard. Abby tells the girls that she thinks some of them did really well last week, but as a whole, they did not do so great. She says she thinks that bringing in Brandon, she thought bringing in a boy would really give the girls the spark that they needed, that it would do the trick and fix all the problems that they were having. Because you know, Rachel, the way to help children adjust to stressful situation after stressful situation, week after week after week, is to just keep throwing new things at them.
Well, I was thinking more, of course, the way to fix anything is just bring a dude into the situation.
There's also that. I mean, on the bright side, I do think if you were going to bring a dude in, the dude to bring in was Brandon, because he did not seem very dude-ish about a lot of it. He seemed relatively chill, and it could have been a lot worse. But yeah, just stop throwing things at children, production. And in Abby's case, literally, don't throw things at children, Abigail. Abby begins talking about the pyramid, and she reveals that the lowest place on the pyramid has gone to Vivi, and once she pulls off the piece of paper covering Vivi's headshot, we can see kind of like a no smoking sign, like that big red circle with a slash through the middle, right over Vivi's face.
The cancel sign.
Yeah, the canceled sign. And all the girls kind of look like shocked at this, and some of them giggle nervously, like Maddie, her jaw drops, and she goes, ha! Like, but it's not a this is funny giggle. It's a I don't know what to do. It's kind of like
Am
when
I
you
supposed to laugh?
Yeah, like what happened. You said, Rachel, like when you said when people get tickled, they're like, we laugh not necessarily because we think it's funny or we're enjoying it, but because it's uncomfortable sometimes. That's how Maddie is laughing here. And I thought that paired with Melissa's response was really great, because Melissa kind of like fully leans in and squints her eyes like she literally cannot believe her eyes. I've never seen a literal representation of that figure of speech so much as what Melissa does. She like bends forward at the waist and squints. Abby, of course, begins telling the girls and the moms how they quit. And she goes on to say that Kathy pulled Vivi away from the team, and now that little girl is going to suffer. But that Vivi's dancing, Vivi's choices, Kathy's choices about Vivi's dancing, is what is going to pay the price for this team, and that it's not going to affect them. She won't let it. None of this should be said in front of the girls. If Abby needs to vent, it's understandable. There was a lot of stuff to deal with when you had Kathy around. I'm sure the moms would also like to commiserate, but then just have the talk with the moms. I know this probably also has something to do with production, wanting this talked about in front of everyone, but Abby goes on to tell the girls that what happened to Vivi will happen to them if they don't learn from what just happened to Vivi, if their mothers don't follow the rules, if they don't show up on time, if they don't do all things correct, they won't get to compete. And that paired with the big red circle across Vivi's face, I worry that what the girls are hearing is like, if you don't do all things correct, if you don't make sure your moms do everything correct, you don't get to be here. That's a very...
And I think there was really only... Maybe I can't remember which episode it was, but there's maybe been only like one other time where it was almost implied that, hey, you're at your position on the pyramid because of your mother. This is the first time that you really hear it explicitly. And as in like the only reason she's here is because of her mother.
And it's paired with the fact that she's no longer on the team. It's not just you're at this place on the pyramid. You're at this place on the pyramid and you're no longer permitted to be here because of your mother. Next on the pyramid is Kenzie, and Abby tells Mackenzie that she's sorry that she lost her duet partner, but she wants to make sure that Mackenzie keeps practicing because she's definitely going to have something for her to do next week. Kenzie tells Abby okay to her face, but then tells us in an interview that she doesn't care if she dances or not because she would rather be at the pool. And
which is so Mackenzie.
At pyramid, she had like crooked ponytails, pigtails. One was higher than the other. Oh, this whole episode, she's the cutest little nugget, and I just want to scoop her up and to take her to the park and let her have fun. She does not need to be in this environment. She's so cute. Next up is Paige, and Abby says that she's performing well. She's happy with what Paige is doing on stage, but she isn't happy with where Paige is placing awards. And as a teacher, for me, what I would feel from that is like, if I was happy with the material I was giving a student and how they were pulling it off, but they weren't winning with it or they weren't placing well, I would worry that I'm not giving what I should be to that student. Like if I teach a class all year and then they take a standardized test and they don't place very well, but they're understanding everything that I'm teaching them in my lesson plan, that tells me that there's something wrong with my lesson plans. So if I were Abby, I would feel like, because she clearly can teach and choreograph winning numbers, what I would feel like is, oh, The judges are seeing something in Paige that I'm not giving her. I need to change that. But no, it's got to be Paige. It's got to be something that Paige is doing wrong. So she goes on, fair warning to our listeners, this next part is really yucky about what Abby is about to say to Paige, so be aware. We're about to hear some yucky stuff said about a
Brace
10-year-old
yourselves.
child. Abby goes on to tell Paige that they're in Vegas this week and that Vegas is Paige's city. She has the body, and she talks a lot about Paige's figure. Paige is tall. She does have a certain look. You can go watch the episode or look up a picture if you really want to know what Paige looked like at this time. I'm not going into it. I'm not playing into Abby's yuckiness. Absolutely not. She says that Paige has the look, so she's giving Paige a solo. Rachel, I know that when you've watched this show in the past, like watching how Abby talks about the girls' bodies and then finding out some of the stuff that Abby had her older dancers do. I don't want to go too far into detail here because I don't want us to trigger anyone who has struggled with disordered eating or body dysmorphia. What do you hear? What is your take on what Paige might be hearing from Abby here without?
I do know that in the ED, the eating disorder world, usually in competitive things like dance and gymnastics are two of probably the most prominent sections or sports that young girls in particular participate in and come out with an eating disorder or disordered eating because they are constantly told, it's about this certain look, or like figure skaters, like we've seen some Disney movies where the teenagers are on very strict diets because they're about to go into competition season, and that right there is disordered eating in and of itself. And so for her, especially with one of her dreams to be like a rockette and a showgirl, like that's a dream that she has, to hear, hey, this body is what's going to get you up there. So your 18, 19-year-old body should look like your 10-year-old body. Like that will stick with her and will drive the rest of her mindset.
Having grown up doing things like dance and theater, it wasn't until I was at the end of my 20s that someone pointed out to me that like female bodies, we have to develop fat in two areas to protect the reproductive organs that we were born with. And if we don't develop that, our bodies are not developing correctly. And because I did grow up in dance and theater, like, you did want that like tall, lanky, and the fact that I'm not saying my dance teacher needed to tell me that I'm supposed to have, big boobs and a little pouch on my belly. I should have been learning that in health class, but I wasn't hearing that. I didn't find out about it until I was in my 20s. That's nuts. The end of my 20s. That's nuts. Next up, we have Nia on the pyramid, and Abby tells her that she finally won her category with her solo and that she finally put in the work. I hate that she added this bit that Nia finally put in the work. All of these girls are so hardworking, but Nia's especially hard. Yeah, that feels extra icky to me. And that she hopes that that last week was enough for her mother, meaning Holly, to trust her and not question her every move anymore. It felt so disgusting and manipulative to me because she's directing all of this right to Nia. She doesn't even look to Holly out of the corner of her eye. Like, I'm saying this about Nia, but I'm really talking about you. No, she says it all right to Nia. And after what she just said about Vivi, like, if you can't keep your moms in line, alluding the fact that the girls might not get to dance there anymore, like that. Ugh. She then goes on to tell Nia that it's all about what she does on stage. It doesn't matter what her costume looks like. It doesn't matter what her choreography is. Not about her music. It's not about this or this or this. It's all about what Nia does when she's on stage, which is complete baloney. If you have a child just march around on stage and do a couple of tumbling passes, she can't win against a child you have doing a front aerial in the middle of two extensive turn sections. And that, to me, this also completely felt like she was goading Holly. She was bringing up all the things that Holly said, like, you know, you can't tell Nia she has to win if you don't give her, you can't tell a kid they have to pass a test if you don't give them the test and the pencil to take the test. Like, they have to have the things. And if you don't give her the supplies, she can't do it. She's bringing up all of the things that Holly has said you're setting my kid up to fail with in a place that she knows Holly's not allowed to speak up. On the bright side, Abby does cap all of this off by saying that Nia will be getting another solo this week. Our fingers are crossed for dear sweet Nia. Next up on the pyramid is Brooke. And from the way that Abby is talking, we can tell, like we kind of pieced together last week, that Brooke did have a solo at the competition that had a pageant. And Abby says that Brooke performed well, but she didn't place in the top 3, which I'm not surprised with. If you keep giving a 13-year-old contortion acro solos, as incredible as they are and as amazing as it is to watch Brooke do them, they are, again, they're not going, it's back to the Nia versus Maddie thing. Brooke's choreography can't compete with what some of the other kids in her age category will be doing. It just won't. Some of those kids will be doing point work and they'll be working on it for an entire year. There's no way. Abby tells Brooke that she can't use excuses. She can't, you know, she can't say, well, but I didn't have this. I have to do acro every week. I don't get to perform at the same caliber. That's basically what she's saying to Brooke. Kind of exactly what she just said to Nia. No excuses. It doesn't matter what I give you. You have to win anyway. She tells Brooke that you should be so good that it doesn't matter. You should blow them away. So basically, she says to Brooke exactly what she just said to Nia. Abby tells Brooke that just like her sister Paige, Vegas is her city too, because Brooke has been talking about wanting to be in a Cirque du Soleil show for years since she was very little, and that this is the place for her to get noticed if she really wants to do that. Kelly and Abby also have this idea that one of the judges is going to be from a Cirque du Soleil show. I'm not sure if this is something production wanted them to say, or if that was an idea that they really had. Most of the time, dance competition judges aren't necessarily local to that city. They might be from that area, but they're part of the faculty for that dance competition. They're not just people that work in the industry around that area. Like I know some judges and that's not how it works. So it's weird. In an interview, Brooke tells us that she wants to be in a Cirque show because she's seen several, and the performers get to wear really cool costumes. Brooke does not always get very cool costumes. Abby's idea of costuming for acro can be really gross. And they hang from the ceiling and they do really cool tricks. And it for me, it was really nice to hear Brooke be excited about something that she's kind of forced to do week after week. I'm sure Brooke doesn't always want to dance acro, but you know, it's nice to hear her get to be excited about it. And at the top of the pyramid this week is Chloe. And Abby does not waste a minute getting digs in at Chloe, obviously, because this can't be celebratory. She says, everyone must be so surprised to see Chloe at the top of the pyramid, because she didn't even dance last week. She did, though. She was in the group, and we know that moving forward in this series, Abby will have no problem putting Maddie at the top of the pyramid when she doesn't have a solo but does well in the group. I know this is the first time because this is season 1, but it's still so weird to me because it's like it's fine when it's another kid, but if it's not Maddie, the kid just didn't dance if they didn't have a solo if they're not Maddie.
Yeah.
Abby goes on to say that everyone keeps going on and on and on and on because that no one can win because Maddie always wins. Abby is going to say this a lot this week. If we had a dime or a penny for every time Abby says something about everyone talking about how much Maddie wins, how unfair it is, we'd have a lot of pennies. She's deliberately missing the point, right? Because the parents aren't saying no one can win because of Maddie. The parents are saying no one can win because Abby puts obstacles in children's way to keep Maddie on top. And to save Abby's own butt, to save her own butt, what Abby does is she only takes the Maddie part of that and runs with it. So she's like, oh, you're also jealous of Maddie. No, we're upset with the rest of it. The stuff that you're doing Abby then goes on to say that she's giving Maddie the week off, and she uncovers Maddie's headshot, which is at the same level as Chloe's. So she's technically also at the top of the pyramid. She's just off to the side. And she goes on to tell Maddie that this has nothing to do with her. She spends a lot of time talking to Maddie at Pyramid in front of everyone about how this isn't about her. She had to do this. Other people forced her hand. And this might have also come from production. Production might have made Abby put someone else at the top of the pyramid. And I do think that it might have been important for Abby to tell Maddie, because Maddie just won a pageant last week, and all of the parents and Abby said that they'd never competed in a pageant before. So to Maddie, this would probably have been the week that she should have been at the top of the pyramid. So it might have been very, very important for a child as anxious as Maddie to hear that this isn't something she did wrong. But I do not think it was appropriate to say it in front of all the other moms and all of the other kids. You're going to have a lot of time with this kid throughout the week, and you probably had some time before Pyramid to have imparted this to her. But that's not Abby's MO. Abby wants to really grind it into all the other kids and all the other moms' faces that I had to do this, Maddie. It's not about you. And this is something she's going to do for years to come. Anytime she has to do something where Maddie doesn't get the 100% special treatment that Abby wants to give her, not that Maddie doesn't deserve, but all the kids deserve accommodation.
And if that's not like a narcissistic approach,
yes,
I don't know what is. Like
that's the part of it.
I had to punish you. I had to torment you.
Yes.
Because of other people.
And the other part of it is this is a really crappy thing to do to both Chloe and Maddie. It takes away from Chloe's moment to be at the top of the pyramid. And it puts Maddie in a really uncomfortable situation. Abby is always putting Maddie in really uncomfortable situations. And it also makes me wonder if Abby was like trying to keep them being Maddie and Chloe, from being happy for one another. Must breed nemesis. In an interview, Melissa is like fully masking. She's doing her little chirpy voice, saying she's fine with it that Maddie had to have a week off. She doesn't mind that Maddie doesn't have any solo. That means Maddie gets to go to the pool. And we can tell that she's not actually okay with it. And that she's also really happy for Chloe. And I'm just like, also, it wouldn't kill you to be actually happy for another child. I feel so sad for Melissa that she missed all these years being happy for other children, including her own other child. Abby tells us that she's tired of hearing all the other moms go on and on and on about Maddie again. So she made sure she leveled the playing field this week. Big surprise, guys. She doesn't actually level the playing field. Everyone make the surprised face. So surprised she didn't actually do it. Christy tells us that she's really happy for Chloe, but that she's worried that Chloe may be being set up to fail. And I feel like so much of this week is just a big fat echo of last week. Abby begins talking about the group dance for the week. She says it's a contemporary routine that will be called Sinful in honor of them being in Sin City. Abby tells us that Sinful is based on the 7 deadly sins. And even for our friends who haven't seen the show, I bet some of you can guess exactly where Abby's going to take this. Melissa tells us in an interview that this week's really important because they only have 2 more competitions, including this one, until they reach nationals. Abby dismisses everyone, and we head into rehearsal. The moms head to the lobby of the studio that they're borrowing this week to make their own dance den, once again, their own dance jail. And they start talking about the previous week. Kelly vents about both of her girls still being at the bottom of the pyramid and how it never seems to matter what they do. They're not doing good enough. And all of the moms agree, even Melissa. And I think this week, if you watch through the lens of knowing what we know now, you can really hear Melissa's love for the Highland girls, especially Paige in this episode. She's like, Paige danced so well last week. She danced the best she's ever danced. She makes me smile. Both Kelly and Holly commiserate over how it never matters how well their girls perform. It never matters what they do. Because when their kids' dances don't contain any actual dance, there's nothing they can do with that. They also talk about how absolutely shocked and abhorred they were at what Abby, and potentially production, but Abby still had to let it happen, what they had done with Vivi's picture. And Melissa says, oh my gosh, just wait until Kathy finds out. And Christy immediately replies like, I don't think we'll be seeing Kathy again. And she jinxes us all because the very next scene is the C class. But this time, we're not listening to the crappy free use classical music. Oh, no. This is crappy free use cartoon villain plotting music. Like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Kathy is telling us over this music while she drives in the C class how very happy she is to be home, seeing the Ohio sign, Ohio welcomes you. And she's so glad to be away from Abby and all those moms, and she just can't wait to get back to her own studio. And she pulls up in front of Candy Apple's dance center. It looks rough. It looks like it needs a little TLC. I'm sure it's just been there for a while, and Ohio gets some weather. I know that. But it is
Kathy
funny.
has all of this money.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is it feels so funny to have heard her talking up how much better her dance studio is, and how she has dressers for the girls and their own seamstress, and then you pull up and it's just, you're like, okay. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to judge a book by its cover. It might be much better on the inside, but the outside, I'm just like, this? You wanted to come back to this? Kathy begins to tell us that she has a plan, and she has finally decided that this plan is something that she's actually going to do. She's actually going to do her plan. God, she was so, I have to like overdo it when I talk, when I say what she's doing, because she was so overdone when she was talking about her plan, and it grossed me out. Oh, my Lanta. Ugh, I'm trying not to gross myself out. She's decided that she's going to take her own dancers. She's going to go toe-to-toe with Abby. And Kathy calls her own team into her own version of the pyramid, which, because she's Kathy and she's fancier, instead of a chalkboard, she's got a flat screen TV. And we have to remember, guys, that this was about 12 years ago now. So flat screen TV, oh boy, that's fancy. It's plasma, guys. It's a plasma screen, flat screen TV. She's so fancy. And she's controlling it from a tablet. And another thing we notice, aside from the fact that she's got this plasma screen TV, is that her team, aside from little Vivian, a boy who looks to be maybe a little bit older than Vivi, whose name is Justice, is that all of her dancers are Brooke's age or older. They could all be Brooke's age because Brooke looks younger. These aren't little dancing ballerinas. No. These are big bun heads. These are big baby bun heads. And big baby bun heads are great. They're requirements. But how is she going to take this team to go head to head and toe to toe with Abby? They can't dance in the same age category. Don't worry, Kathy's got a plan for that. We'll find out about it later.
The audacity she has to say, I don't know how she's out there winning when her girls have such terrible technique. And I'm like, Kathy
spends some time bad-mouthing, like Rachel just said. She bad-mouths the ALDC, and she bad-mouths Abby, their dancing, the technique, her choreography. And
make herself feel better, likely.
Oh, most likely. And this is something, start remembering everything we say about Kathy from now on, because Kathy's going to love to say that Abby does the same things over and over and over again as far as dancing goes. Kathy does the same thing over and over and over and over again as far as behavior and jealousy goes. So just, if our listeners wanted to, start taking notes of the things that Kathy says about Abby. You could make a bingo card for every episode. And every time Kathy is included, I'm sure there's a bingo in like every episode that includes Kathy, because she just repeats herself. She tells everyone that they're going to do their own version of the pyramid, and they're only going to take 3 kids to go with her to Hollywood. She's only going to take 3 kids to go with her to Hollywood, and one of them obviously has to be who, Rachel?
Vivi.
Duh. Like, I don't know why she even said 3. Maybe to make it sound better. Maybe so she could make the Candy Crapple pyramid, because you can't really do that with 2 kids. But obviously Vivi was gonna go. So Vivi's going. Justice, the boy, is going. And then one of the older girls named Taylor. Now, I would say Taylor looks to be about the same age as Brooke. If I had to pick a girl who looks to be the same age as Brooke Taylor's the one I would pick. That, of course, could mean that she's younger than Brooke, because, again, Brooke does look younger. I don't know. And in an interview, Kacie tells us that she thinks that this is artistic vengeance. And we can tell that she's narcissism all over everything, everyone, everywhere. I would have hated to have been anywhere near Kacie at this time. Kacie has said that she really wanted to be done with the show. She had signed on to do just the little docuseries portion, and now it was continuing on. She wasn't happy. The reason that this show was even at her studio is at Candy Apples is because she had said she was no longer traveling with the ALDC. She refused. She needed to go back to her own studio. So Lifetime accommodated that. And they said, okay, well, then we're just going to have to film your team instead. She said she didn't want to do that. And part of that may be true. But I still think she was enjoying this.
For all that she had to say about the pyramid and how Abby compares the girls. What?
For all she says nothing. It's just like, it's like a hot air balloon. It's huge, but filled with nothing.
But then she goes and she does the same thing in her studio. And it's like,
that's Abby and Kacie the entire show. One of them says they'll never do what the other one did, and then they do exactly that, and then Kacie does something and Abby says, I would never do that. And then she does the exact same thing. And then then Abby does something that Kacie says she'll never do. And then Kacie does it and she does another thing. And Abby says, I would never do that. And they just keep repeating each other's behaviors and then upping the ante and the other one follows them. But they both think neither of them are doing it. We head back to Vegas and we join everyone in group rehearsal. Abby tells us that she's decided she's really going to up the ante with this dance. So she's going to have a section where each girl does their own choreography and each one will portray their very own one of the 7 deadly sins. Now, like I said earlier, when I announced what kind of dance this was going to be, I'm sure lots of you could see exactly where Abby was going to take this. She is going to take this opportunity to tell these little children which one of the 7 deadly sins they remind her of. And I'm not going to go through all that. I'm not going to tell you which one of the girls is what. I'll give you an example. I won't tell you which one she attributes this to. She tells one of the girls that they are sloth. Because no matter what kind of choreography she gives them, no matter what opportunities she provides them with, they give it back to her. Bleh. Doesn't matter what I do for you. You're always bleh. You don't care. I'm not going to sit here for several minutes and do that with 6 little girls. Because she thankfully does not have Mackenzie in this routine. I would have never finished watching this series if she had done this to Mackenzie at this age. Abby does attribute a sin to each girl and tells them why she thinks that they should portray this particular sin. She even does this with Maddie. And I don't know what Abby's deal was with Maddie this week. She just must have been pissed off because she says some things to Maddie this week that I'm just like, giving her the week off doesn't mean you have to. Can't you be nice to any of them ever? You're supposed to be nice to this one and you can't. She's very inappropriate and clearly enjoys every minute of what she's doing, which is another thing about narcissists that I just hate. I hate watching them do something disgusting to another human being and watching them relish it and revel in it. The girls are very confused by it. In interviews, they tell us, they're like, we don't really know what we're doing. We didn't really understand. Miss Abby had to tell us. And Maddie says this particularly in a interview. She's like, Miss Abby had to explain it to us. And the way she says it, I'm just like, oh, you lost a piece of your childhood that day, didn't you? The moms are upset, obviously. And of course, the only mom who's fine with all of this is Melissa. She's like, it's just acting. It's just the part they had to play. And I'm just like, rehearsal is interrupted by a surprise guest. Abby has invited a real-life retired Vegas showgirl named Liz to come and speak with the girls. The girls are completely starstruck. Some of their jaws actually drop when she walks in the door. It's adorable. It's so cute. They get to practice learning how to walk like a showgirl. Chloe tells us in an interview, it's like walking like a giraffe. You have to have a really big neck. And it's so cute. the girls must have thought this was so cool because, again, like you said, Rachel, lots of them wanted to grow up and be Rockettes at this point. Paige and Chloe, especially, this is what they wanted to do.
Mhm.
And so getting to see one in real life, and Liz is so tall. Liz is like Paige if someone, you know, like enlarged her on a computer screen. She's tall and blonde. She's statuesque. She's wearing like short character shoes, not very tall heels, but she's wearing one so she can show the girls how to walk in the character shoes. And it just makes her, she's taller than the dance mirror. And if you've ever been anywhere near a dance studio, those things are fucking tall. She's so giant. And to these tiny little baby girls, I can't imagine how big she must have seemed, so much larger than life. Then she interrupts herself to say, does someone want to try something on? And she walks over and she opens this chest in the back of the dance room, and there's all these costumes in it. There's these huge feather boas and the headpieces that show girls wear, and the girls are just, normally when something like this happens, the girls like start doing that little girl jumping up and down screaming thing. They were so excited, they were knocked speechless. None of them screamed. They were just like they could not believe they got to do this. They all got to put on head pieces. Even Brooke put stuff on. That's how you know how cool this was. It was so cool that the teenager wanted to do it. The moms are there. They're taking pictures. It's so cute. It's so cute. As the girls are wrapping up, Liz brings in I don't know if it was someone that she just knew from, like, had taught at one point. It's a younger showgirl who's in full costume, or Liz is just wearing regular clothes with her character shoes. She brings in another showgirl named Katie who's in full costume and full makeup, and the girls are losing it. And Liz starts telling them stories about what it was like to work back in the day. And she mentions being offered the role of getting to be principal dancer. And for anyone who's familiar with the dance world, being offered the role of principal or soloist is like, that's it. That's the top of the dance world pyramid, okay? That's it. There's no higher place to go. And so she says she was offered a role as the principal dancer of a show, but she would have had to have worked topless. And all of the adults' faces in the room fall, including Abby's. And I will tell you, having taught art, in the arts, there are times where this happens. Like, you invite someone to come and speak, or the administration invites someone to come and speak in your class, and you don't get to fully vet them. At least when you're the person who invites them, you get to be like, okay, listen, I need you to know these are little kids. Abby also was so used to just saying, will you come and speak? She referred to all of her kids as her dancers. Will you come and talk to my dancers? I don't think she ever really said, like, they're this age. So I don't necessarily think this is something that Abby did on purpose. I could also see production having vetted this person and sent her in and thought that this would be a funny story for her to tell. I think there's lots of ways that this could have fallen through the cracks. And the other thing is Liz is so tall, I'm sure everyone below a certain looks like a tiny child to her.
Probably.
I'm sure Brooke and Mackenzie look like identical twins. She doesn't know. I don't think she was thinking about it. And as soon as she, like, sees on the parents and Abby's face, she's like, oh, maybe this isn't appropriate. She starts to walk it back. But at this point, the damage is done. The moms are like, this is awful. Holly was completely mortified. Even Melissa in an interview doesn't try to cover it up. She doesn't say, like, it was just dance, it was an accident. She's like, if Maddie ever said she wanted to work topless, I'd lock her in her room and throw away the key. Like, you know, it's bad. Kelly doesn't try to say this happens in the dance world. Everyone was upset.
I bet the girls, though, were probably just like,
oh. The only girl who had any kind of, like, reaction really that I saw was Brooke, and she was like, because at this point, I'm sure Brooke's the only person who's even thinking about what topless means. She's the only one who's even got anything to cover.
I will say that a lot of times adults sexualize things for children.
That
like,
kids
it's
don't.
not sexual to kids because they don't have the context
Yes.
to make it sexual. So adults make it sexual for them.
I don't think any of this was intentional. I don't think Abby meant for it. Abby says in an interview, she's like, and then she started talking about having her top off, and I was like, jeez. And I'm like, yep, That's why you really got to make sure you know exactly who you're inviting, and you can't just say, come talk to my dancers, because this would have been a fine conversation to even have with like the preteen girls on up. Like, you want to talk to them about how to be safe in the workplace and how to watch out for predatory. You might be offered jobs that require things of you and your body that you're not comfortable with. You need to be aware of that, but not for the babies, okay? If most of them qualify to be in the mini age category at a dance competition, this is not the place to have this conversation. That's why you have to be very specific about who they're coming to talk to. Next, we head out for a cupcake date with Christy and Kelly, and it just gave me all the warm fuzzies, Rachel, because you and I used to go on cupcake dates all the time. And Christy arrives a little late because she had to stop by and pick up Chloe's costume. This is how we find out that Kelly hasn't even seen Paige's costume yet, let alone go to pick it up. She hasn't seen a sketch of it, nothing regarding Paige's costume. And Kelly tells us in an interview that she doesn't understand why everyone else's costumes always get done on time, always arrive when they need to, but her kids are always left scrounging at the last minute, and she's just expected to be happy about it. Kelly tells Christy that she feels like something is always wrong with her kids' dances, with her kids' costumes, and it, like, every week it's at least one of them. It just keeps happening over and over and over, and she wants to change it, but she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to bring it up, and if she does bring it up, she knows what's going to happen. And they, commiserate together for a while, but then they're like, okay, we can't stall any longer. We gotta go back. So they wrap up their cupcake date, and it's the next day. So it's day 2, and we join Chloe at the studio for her solo rehearsal. And while they don't tell us what style Chloe's solo is, I'm going to guess it's musical theater based on the kind of choreography that she's doing, the costuming and the music. And again, if Abby's expectation of Chloe is that she win because Maddie isn't competing, Abby would never give Maddie a musical theater routine on a week where the stakes are very high.
So Dance Moms fandom, the Dance Moms wiki, does say it is a musical theater piece.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the dance I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm not a dance expert for nothing. I can usually pick out what kind of dance it is, and I was like, that doesn't look like the kind of dance you expect someone to win first place with, Abigail. That looks like a very cute, very adorable, very Chloe loves it musical theater piece. She might win her category, but she won't win first overall. Chloe tells us in an interview that she's nervous about this particular week because Miss Abby has said that she has to win. She has to win because Maddie isn't competing against her, and that lots of people have told her that Maddie is her toughest competition, so she guesses that she is. And the way she says this just kind of broke my heart, because I'm just like, they just wanted to be best friends. You and I have talked about this before. Like, they just wanted to be best friends and do dancing together. And so hearing her say, like, lots of people tell me she's my biggest competition, so I guess that she is. Wouldn't that just sound nicer if she was like, lots of people tell me she's one of my best friends, so I guess she is? What do you think, with all this outside influence, especially coming from the adults around them, what these two little sweet babies might be thinking about their friendship, how this might be affecting the way that they think about each other?
I mean, anytime that you compare two kids, and we see it a lot sometimes with
siblings.
With Chloe's interviews, she's kind of like, I mean, she's, they say she's my biggest competition. I just wish that, like, we wouldn't be compared because we are two different dancers. It's quite the contrast when you see the interviews between her and Maddie, where Maddie's like, yeah, I win. I like to win, blah, blah, blah. And Chloe's like, I just want to be good enough.
As Chloe's rehearsal continues, Abby starts getting louder and more aggressive with Chloe. And at one point, she's like shouting out her choreography at Chloe. And she's like, and I'm just like, how can you say these joyful things? Because I think of one of the things I always loved about dance was like, everything is pretty and pink and French and lovely. And you're screaming it so aggressively. Like, she's taking French and making it sound German.
It's like the opposite of what I teach some kids who, like, when you are feeling angry and you feel like you're going to say some mean things, say the word bubbles instead, because you can't say bubbles in an angry voice. Like, it's the opposite of that.
Like, to me, it sounds like she's like it sounds just as ridiculous as someone doing the Screamo version of the Sesame Street theme song. Sunny day, screaming clap, like that. To me, that's what it feels like. I'm just like, this. How do you do that? Ugh. And at one point, Abby says to Chloe, she's tired of hearing Maddie. What about Chloe? Again, like I said, if we kept track of all the times Abby says Maddie's name repetitively, what about Maddie? What about Chloe? We'd be able to buy a soda from a vending machine with 50 pennies. In Abby's interview, she tells us that Chloe just needs to realize that there are thousands of Maddies out there and that she just needs to get over it and go out there and win because she's great, not because she's worried about someone else. Again, she can't do that. Brooke can't do that. And Nia can't do that if you don't give them numbers that are set to compete and win. You're in charge of that. And Chloe has proved time and again she's capable of pulling those numbers off. If you don't think the other two are, I think you're wrong. And I also think that that's on you because you're the person who trains them. You can't give them crappy choreography and say that they only don't win because they're not trying. Chloe told us in an interview that Miss Abby can be tough, really tough, and that when she yells at you, it doesn't feel great. And this interview, almost all of Chloe's interviews, this episode just make me want to cry. And this particular interview, she sounds burnt out. The way she talks, she says, when Miss Abby yells at you, doesn't feel great. She like talks through like gritted teeth, and I'm just like, this is not how 10-year-olds are supposed to talk. It reminded me of the week before when Maddie got yelled at by Juliana's mom, and she was like, I don't care if I don't win. And it's like, this isn't how these teeny tiny children are supposed to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And people might say like, well, they're just repeating, their moms. They're just imitating the adults around them. And I'm like, that might be true, but I also think it reflects how they actually feel. And I think they feel too mature for their age. Next, we head out on our regularly scheduled production field trips for the week. You would have thought it was the cupcake date, but no. The girls are going out with Abby for a special ice cream date, and the moms are going out for a night on the Vegas Strip. For the most part, Abby will not stop talking about dance and the girls as moms while they eat these very comically large sundaes. And even the girls in interviews tell us, they're like, when we go out with Miss Abby, all she does is talk about dance and our moms. She will not stop. We do get one very cute moment, which all of the moms have said they love. Abby dabs some whipped cream on Mackenzie's face, and Mackenzie does the Home Alone like face in response. And it is, again, I'm a baby Kenzie simp. I love her. I die. She's so cute. But there could have been a whole slew of moments like this and maybe production told Abby she had to talk about the moms, but from what the girls have said, even before the show, when they would go out to do anything or when they would have a local competition and Abby would just take them all on a bus, they would show up all ready in their costumes and makeup, and then they would just go. This is all Abby did. And I'm just like, well, that's sad, because when Abby lets the girls be girls, we get the thing with the gummy worm in your mouth, and I thought you like gummy worms, and whipped cream. Let's just let them be little baby kids and have cute moments with them. It's so much more fun to just enjoy them being little. I promise. Mm-hmm. Speaking from experience, I promise it's so much more fun to enjoy it.
I will say, though, something that caught my attention, but probably because I was looking for it and I'm in the field. But she addressed ice cream as being like a special treat rather than just a food. It was one of those things where it was like the girls were really excited because they likely are very restricted, whether at home or because of studio stuff. Like they don't usually get to enjoy it. So she calls it like a very special treat rather than just ice cream being ice cream.
The moms head out on the strip in a limo, and they get to enjoy a night together at a bar called -5, which if anyone has been to the Venetian in Las Vegas, you've probably walked by it. It's in the shops, and it's a special bar where everything except for the liquids and the people are made out of ice. And so you have to wear jackets when you go in. Normally you just wear a parka that they provide to you. That's included in your admission, but you can pay to upgrade. And I think production probably paid for the moms to upgrade, so they get to wear fur coats and fur headbands, and they go in and they have a really fun time. They do a thing called a shot ski, which is an actual ski that's outfitted with shot glasses bolted onto it, filled with shots, and they all take the shot together. And there's a bunch of ice sculptures inside the bar, and one of them is of the female nude from the neck to right above the no square. And they make a joke that it looks like Melissa, the boobage, and it's very funny. One of the fun things to note about this particular night is it was the last night that they were all just people from Pittsburgh, the kids and Abby, the moms. The next day, Dance Moms would have premiered and they would have been a known entity. So this night is very special to all of them. On the 10th anniversary of Dance Moms premiering, Christy had shot skis made and sent to Kelly and Melissa and Holly in remembrance. They all have very fond memories of this night out together, and it's very sweet. It makes me happy. Yeah, I know, right? They're all being goofy and they're having a good time, and it's really cute. It's the next day, and we join Paige for her solo rehearsal. The editors did something super gross. They tagged this solo as being burlesque when it's a fucking jazz acro gym. Like, I am sure that some dance competitions, because some dance competitions have an adult category, an adult age category. So I am sure that some dance competitions allow burlesque style as long as no clothes are removed. I'm sure that some of them allow that kind of dance. However, I'm 1,000,000% sure, because all of them have rules in their registration booklets that they have to be age appropriate. Burlesque dance is not appropriate for a 10-year-old. Thankfully, Paige tells us very quickly in an interview that it's an acro piece and it's called Tongue Twister, and she really likes it, and she's dancing with the chair. She's dancing with the chair. Oh, props. Abby tells us that the pressure is really on this week for the solos and that she wants all of them to go out there and place 20 points above their competition. Abby, this is what the moms are talking about when they say she sets the kids up to fail. No one is ever in the entirety of life going to place 20 points above their next closest competition in pretty much anything, but especially not in dance. Because they are really trying to encourage kids to stick with dance.
I mean, even Simone Biles, who can score significantly above her competitors, will not ever score 20 points above the second place.
Abby is, and she'll say this for years to come, she'll like, you should be 10 points, you should be 15 points ahead of your competition. That will never happen, Abigail. Even when the girls get older and they start scoring perfect scores, their next closest competition is at most maybe a point, but usually never more than a few tenths to half a point below them. Next up, we join the moms at the pool for some highly overproduced shenanigans. The moms are hanging out in the pool and they're catching some sun and they're enjoying some drinks when they notice, if you can't hear the air quotes, trust me, they're there, these three guys hanging out across from them. They just happen to be there. They definitely didn't sign releases or have to be spotted by casting because they had to fit a certain physical type or anything. No. The guys start to attempt to flirt with the moms, and they ask why they're there, and the moms say that they're there because of their daughter's dance competition, and the guys say, well, they all dance too, they work at Peep Show. Once they hear that Holly has multiple degrees, including a PhD, they start going in on how amazing her big, beautiful brain is, and how it must be hard for her to carry that around, so it must be so heavy, and it's gross, but overproduced, so we know it's fake. And Holly is having absolutely none of it. She tells us in an interview, she's like, where did these guys come from? And why don't they go back there? And I love that. Christy finds the whole thing absolutely wildly funny. She's like, Holly was getting the moves put on her at the pool. And Kelly jokingly agrees to give the guys her number if they give her tickets to the peep show. And Christy says, yeah, you go right on ahead, Kelly. You make some bad choices. I'll be over here. And I think Kelly was probably just joking or with the guys or trying to call their bluff because I think she was like, you guys are completely production plants. I don't even know that you work at peep show. You guys weird. It's the next day, and it's time for Brooke's solo rehearsal. Brooke's solo is, surprise, surprise, another acro number. This one is entitled Metamorphosis, which Kelly tells us is perfect for Brooke because she's transitioning from a baby into a young woman. And it's important for us to note that this is not a new solo for Brooke. I believe this was her regularly scheduled studio solo for this season. And if it wasn't for this season, it was the season before. And as Brooke runs her dance, she's with Gianna and Kelly. As Brooke is dancing, we find out that her shoulder has been bothering her, and Brooke tells us that it keeps popping out. This is something that happens to children with hypermobility spectrum issues. We've talked before about the possibility that Brooke has this. We can't diagnose anyone, but the way she continues to bend in ways she shouldn't past a certain age and her repeated injuries definitely say she should probably get screened. Brooke tells us in an interview that even though she's hurt, she knows that not dancing isn't an issue for her.
Interesting that Abby's like, she would be screaming in pain. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. Especially if it's so relaxed, like the connective tissues are so relaxed that it just like, oh, let's pop out. Like, yeah, it might hurt, but it might not be a screaming pain hurt.
It doesn't feel good, I'll tell you that, but you're used to it and you're just like, nah, that didn't feel great, but all right. Next, we head to Christy and Chloe's hotel room where they are having a mommy-daughter talk. And they are talking about Chloe being at the top of the pyramid this week, but we can tell from the sound of things that Chloe is a lot more anxious about this week than she is excited for it. And Chloe says that Abby has been telling her all week that she has to win because Maddie isn't dancing. You have to win. You have to win. And Christy is trying to comfort Chloe by telling her that she doesn't have to win. She doesn't need to worry about being like Maddie, that Christy doesn't want her to be like Maddie. She wouldn't trade one Chloe for 100 Maddies. And I think that this is a very important thing for Chloe to hear. But I didn't like being party to this conversation because I also feel like Maddie wasn't hearing this from anyone in this same way. I feel like anytime Maddie was hearing about her value, it might have been linked to she wins all the time. She's such a great dancer. And I'm not saying that I mean, I wasn't there. I don't necessarily know for sure, but that's what we end up hearing. So it makes me a little sad because I'm just like, I don't want to be listening in on someone's personal conversation because it makes me worry for the other kid, and then that's not my place. In an interview, Christy tells us that she feels like Abby is just putting way too much pressure on Chloe this week, and back in the room with Chloe, she makes a pinky swear with Chloe that she won't let Abby continue to treat her this way, and we can tell that Christy is on the verge of tears, and she tells Chloe that she will be right back. And I know that before we head off to where Christy is headed, you had some insight that you wanted to share with us, Rachel.
I appreciated this conversation because, I don't think that it was produced. I think they were in there, and they were like, oh, like this is a good conversation, or maybe, hey, how do you give her a pep talk or whatever it may be. But it was it was what I hope that more parents do for their children. It was very anti-comparison and encouraging, like, hey, just do your best. Like, your best is going to be good enough for me. Because I have worked with kids whose parents like, oh, well, your best is all A's. So if you don't get all A's, then it's not your best and it's not good enough. And just having to like retrain some kids' brains because their parents have these unrealistic expectations of them when like
Mhm.
doing your best is good enough, and your best one day might be 10%, and if you give that whole 10%, you're giving your best, and your best on another day might be a 90%. Like there's no, like you just give your best, do what you can.
Right. Christy heads off down the hotel hallway, telling us that when Chloe told her all of the awful things that Abby is saying to her and has been screaming at her all week, she could not handle it anymore, and she knows that it's her duty as Chloe's mother to take care of this for Chloe. And Christy knocks on Abby's door. Abby answers the door while speaking on the phone. Christy tells her that they need to talk, and of course, Abby, right off the bat, making comments about Christy's behavior, says that Christy is being rude. And to me, the thing that I thought was funny about this is like, Christy would have had to have like called or something to have scheduled this meeting instead of just coming in and knocking. And also, like, if the moms go and check on her, she's going to say they're being rude and interrupting her or like annoying her. Anyway, Christy tells Abby that she's like a little kid with like cookies. You have to give her a cookie to get her to do anything. So
you
have
think
to give,
Oreos would work for Abby?
you have to give her $1. No, with Abby it's dollars. You have to give her $1. A cookie might work every once in a while, but you have to give her $1. Abby obviously takes every opportunity to degrade Christy, making fun of the way that Christy was raised, saying Christy is a terrible parent herself, visibly reveling in every second of Christy's pain, no matter what Abby says, and telling her that Chloe loves being at the dance studio when Christy just drops her off, which is not true. We have proof of that just from this season. On Chloe's birthday, Abby was awful to her and made her cry when Chloe had no way of changing the things that were happening. The week that she had her hair down, she didn't have stuff with her. And it's not like Christy just left her there of her own volition. She had to go out and shoot something else for the show. And it was Chloe's birthday, the one day that, you know, she should have been treated with kindness. I mean, she should be treated with kindness and respect every day, but
all of that, yeah.
Especially her birthday, but no. And she tells Christy that Chloe is only unhappy and scared when Christy is there, and Abby is worried about what kind of parent she is. And she says that Christy wishes that Maddie was her daughter, not Chloe, and that Christy needs to learn to love Chloe the way that Abby does, which is unconditionally. Mm-hmm. And this does seem to be Abby's MO with Christy, screaming insults at her, hitting way below the belt. And I just want to know, do you think she's trying to control her, or is she just enjoying Christy's pain? Is there something else to it?
Probably both of those things. Okay. Certainly trying to instill a self-doubt, which would then create dependence. So we know that like something that narcissists do to create that dependence is, you know, you'll never be good enough without me.
Yeah.
You know, you're only worth anything because I say so. And that's kind of what Abby's getting at here is like, you're not good enough. If you want your daughter to succeed, you have to depend on me, which is a control and manipulation tactic.
I guess that makes sense because at one point she did say to Christy, like, I'm the one that created Chloe and her success. And Christy has to say, like, you didn't create her. You did not carry her for 9 months to give birth. So Christy asks Abby to please stop comparing Chloe with Maddie and to stop saying things to her, because apparently Abby had gone backstage at a competition or convention and told Chloe to go on stage and be like Maddie. And Christy says, who says that to a little kid? And Abby does the Olaf, I'm impaled thing and completely misses the point again, because she says, why wouldn't I say that? Why wouldn't you want to be like Maddie? I want to be like Maddie. And so Abby is completely missing the idea that the problem is, you know, that's comparing the two of them and telling Chloe, don't be yourself, be someone else. All Abby is hearing is like, I want to, and to me, this is so ass backwards, because all week you know, Abby's been saying, all I hear is Maddie, Maddie, Maddie. Everyone else stop saying, be like Maddie, be like Maddie. But then she's saying, I want to be like Maddie.
I think, particularly with narcissists, like once they have that label on you, they're going to do everything in their power to control that narrative around you. So, not to directly label anybody, because you did not when you were talking about the 7 deadly sins, but in particular, you know, the one envy was brought up, and it was attributed to a specific girl for a specific reason, and it's just ironic that Abby is bringing envy up, and her own envy of Maddie.
Do we think that Abby is actually the one who is jealous of Maddie?
Potentially.
For the most part, Christy manages to maintain her composure during this conversation. She does tear up a bit, and she tells us that these tears are not tears of sadness, they're tears of frustration. And I think for anyone who's had to deal with a narcissist or someone with narcissistic tendencies, again, we can't diagnose Abby long term, you probably know this feeling. We see Christy, if you watch the episode, at one point she goes, oh, and she like, you know, breathes out of exasperation. She rolls her eyes and she puts her head in her hand, and she's just like, oh my God, like she's hit her wall. She's like, it doesn't matter what I say, you're not gonna, you can't hear me. Christy asks Abby, she's like, okay, bottom line, what are your expectations for Chloe this week? And Abby says she has to win. Bottom line, she has to win. I want people to be buzzing about Chloe. And she does this thing with her hands where she's like grabbing at the air. I want people to be buzzing about her after the competition. And I mean, again, I can't imagine how Christy must have been feeling, because I feel like Christy had to have known, like, Chloe can't win at a big competition with that number. It's a cute number. It's a sweet number. It's a darling number. And maybe she'll win her category. But she can't win the competition with that number. You wouldn't give it to Maddie to win. What is this? So Christy tells Abby that maybe they should just, you know, try and move forward together. They're kind of stuck with one another. And she kind of extends an olive branch to Abby. She goes, I know you've said in the past that you don't really like me. And Abby does this is so, if you deal with a narcissist in your life, you know this move. Abby cannot accept this olive branch. She has to swat it down. Christy says, I know you've said you don't like me. And Abby goes, I've said I can't stand you. And she says it with, you know, this like relishing look on her face, like, I'm going to rub your face in it. And she says it with that tone of voice. And Christy, you watch the air go out of her again. She's just like, right. Like, I know who I'm dealing with. Why did I even bother? It's okay.
And that's such a reality of like having to deal with a narcissist. And being in a conversation with a narcissist, and you come to a point where you're like, I know I'm not going to win. So I'm just going to gray rock. I'm not really going to continue to argue. I'm just going to go, okay, and walk away.
There is no point.
I can't put out any more energy.
Because it'll get worse. This does seem to break Christy a little bit. Because again, we've learned a bit about Christy's family past before. I think she's just, you know, there's only so much anyone can take. But when you don't have the support system that you're trying to provide for someone else, and you're being attacked for it, it really can. It's like having an emotional scab, like get caught on something like a piece of clothing, and it rips right off and it hurts like a mother. It's just like that. And you tear up for a second and you can't hold it back. You're trying to, but you can't. And this happens to Christy, and she just goes, I'm not as bitchy as I come across. Like, just that she emotionally bleeds just a little bit. She can't hold it in. And Abby tells us in an interview that she saw a more human side of Christy today, that she was a bit more emotional, but she never changes how she treats Christy. And so part of me wonders if she just said what she said there because she feels like she got the reaction she wanted out of Christy. Because that's something I've also noticed with narcissists in my life is like they'll say the technically right thing if they feel like they've gotten to you.
They will.
They're not they don't apologize. But
No.
they'll be like,
why would they? They're not wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, it's now competition day, and it seems like the team has arrived late because as soon as the moms and girls walk into the dressing room, Abby is screaming at them, saying the girls should have been dressed, hair and makeup stretched, and checking out the stage an hour ago. And this is as though the moms would have had any control over what's happening. They had very limited control once the show was there and filming with them in Pittsburgh and they were just driving around the East Coast. Once they started traveling and not going home in between traveling, this got so much like they were completely dependent on production getting them from place to place. So I don't know if they had interviews they had to do that morning or what, but it's not like the moms and the girls had any control over this. And this is something that narcissists do, or people with narcissistic tendencies do when they get stressed out. They start taking everything out on anyone they feel like they can lay blame on. And Abby can't blame production. She can't scream at production, and she can't scream about production when they're filming. She knows that. So who can she scream at? The kids and their moms. So she does.
I will say, so the Dance Moms Wiki says that during the time of attending Thunderstruck, cast members attended 2 other national competitions that were not filmed for the show. So they very well could have genuinely be coming from another competition.
So it's not like, again, it's not like they would have had any control, and Abby's just screaming at them. And if they were going to 2 other competitions, that would have been on Abby. And Abby's still screaming at them. It's ugh. As the girls are walking to the stage for the group dance, we can see that Maddie's acting a little extra sassy. She's making a duck face. She's, strutting her stuff. And she tells us in an interview that before they go on stage for the group, she wants to get into her character. She really wants to make sure she's 100% ready. She's in her character that Abby had given her to portray for Sinful. And she thinks that they're going to do really well for this week's group dance. Of course, Abby, seeing this, cannot resist the opportunity to knock someone down a peg because that's just who she is this week. And she tells Maddie, you better have that same confidence later. Again, I cannot imagine what the cameras captured this week that they didn't show us. Because if they were comfortable, like if they showed us her snapping at Maddie like this on camera, what the hell was she saying when they weren't there? Abby then tells us in an interview that she thinks it's going to be really tough for the girls to pull off a win this week because the dance is really hard and there are a lot of really good studios here. And I just want to remind Abby that she's the one who put the girls on stage with this particular routine. No one else did that. The girls take the stage. We get a really nice shot of the dance. Originally, I was like, uh-oh, does someone mess up? Thankfully, no. They seem to nail the dance. It's really cute. As the girls exit the stage, Chloe tells us in an interview that all the girls thought they did a pretty good job and that she thinks she did well portraying her character. We head to awards for the group, and on the bright side, this week the team did place in the top 10, but on the not so bright side, they only placed 7th, which we know is not going to go over well with Abby. Abby tells us in an interview that 7th place is not the Abby Lee Dance Company, that they want to place in the top 5 wherever they go. And I wanted to ask you about Abby's changing standards, because last week she was upset that they didn't place in the top 10. This week she's saying they better place in the top 5. When they place in the top 5 but not in the top 3, she's upset about that. And then if they place in the top 3 but they don't get first, she's upset about that. If they place first and they're not 10 points ahead of everyone else, she's not happy with it. Like, what is that?
I think in part, 1, she'll just never be happy.
Okay.
But 2, I also think that like there is an amping up in terms of the competition. And so there are somewhat higher stakes. So while like maybe some of like the local stuff, she's like, yeah, I mean 10, whatever. Like it's not a defining thing. These higher level competitions, like you want to be up there.
Because like to me, this paired with the not being able to give the children a definitive definition of technique, but then expecting them to be able to give her one, Like, I was just like, what is this, Abby? Like, you can't keep changing the rules and then expecting them to follow them. They can't memorize rules that don't exist. The girls come out of awards and the moms try and cheer them up by telling them that the judges were being silly and they deserved a lot better. This feels produced, but we get, Holly being like, those judges were being silly. And anytime Holly is Hollying, I'm happy, and I think it's a cute moment, so I'm good with it. Brooke tells us in an interview that even though they didn't place very high this week, she knows that when they get to nationals, their things will be different because there'll be a different set of judges, and that those judges will have different opinions about their dance. And I just wanted to shout Brookie out right here because I think that is a very mature outlook for someone her age to have. And someone could say, like, well, she was burnt out, so she probably just didn't care. And I'm like, no, when a 13-year-old is burnt out and they don't care, they're not going to say something like that. They're just going to be like, whatever, who even cares when we get to nationals?
Especially Brooke.
Especially Brooke. But for her to say this, I'm just like, wow, Kelly deserves a pat on the back. This is a kid who has been reminded great parenting, great growth mindset, Brooke. Great job, everybody involved there, except for Abby. Abby can take some remedial preschool. It's now time for solos, and Abby tells us in an interview that since the group dance did not place as well as she wanted it to, the pressure's really going to be on for the solos because, it's not a week of Dance Moms if Abby is not trying to freak a bunch of little children out right before they go on stage. As the girls are getting dressed for the solos, we find out that Nia's solo is unfortunately once again something with, of course, an ethnic tinge to it. We find this out because her costume looks a certain way, and Abby tells her to samba around the room to warm up, and it just makes me...
Her dance name is Corazon,
which means heart in Spanish. That's not bad.
So yes, it certainly was an ethnic dance.
We also find out at this point that no one has seen or heard about Paige's solo costume, and she's supposed to be getting ready for the stage right now. Again, we want to remember that this easily could have been production. Production lived to mess with costumes, but this is such a shitty thing to do when little kids are involved. And already this week, Kelly has mentioned that this is happening week after week after week. And we now know years later that this sort of thing had been happening to her and her kids years before the show started, which production had to have known. So doing it, they liked to do things to certain moms because they knew it would garner a specific response. And I feel like they had to have known that this was garnering a specific response with Kelly, and it was an easy trigger to pull for her. Paige finally does get to try on her costume, and of course it doesn't fit, and it specifically doesn't fit in a way that's going to be incredibly dangerous for the kind of dance that Paige is doing. It's one-sleeved, and the sleeve that is there, it's too big all over, and so the sleeve that is there hangs way low, like off of her hand. And because she's doing an acro gym routine, she will be doing tumbling passes. You cannot tumble with something covering your hand. She could slip and fall and die. And Abby's great solution to this is to tuck and pin her costume, which looks really bad. It's a leotard, and she starts tucking it in at the waist, so it looks terrible, but also pins when she's going to be tumbling. This wouldn't be safe if Paige was just going on stage to tap dance. Those could come out and stab her, or they could fall on the floor and she could land on one. And then Abby turns to Kelly and goes, oh, she's going to need a headpiece. And Kelly goes, okay, I don't have one. And Abby goes, well, you need to make one. And Kelly goes, she goes on stage in 15 minutes. So Abby goes, right, so you should be making one now. This gives me anxiety on so many levels. I don't even have words for it. Kelly, of course, is understandably upset. She asks Abby why these things keep happening to her kids specifically, and why Abby always makes sure that everyone else's costumes are there and that they fit them, but she doesn't do this for Brooke and Paige. Abby obviously takes the opportunity to be like, but what if this was an audition? What if it was this? What if... And on the bright side, Kelly's not having any of this. I do think that this probably happens to Abby fairly regularly, and I think she tries to throw this around with like newer parents, like, oh, this is a great learning opportunity. But the one parent this isn't going to fly with is Kelly. Kelly used to be your dancer. And Kelly's had her kids at your studio longer than she danced with you herself. She's not going to play your games, and if you try and make her, you won't win.
I feel like Kelly has dealt with narcissists before.
Kelly grew up with Abby. She has dealt with narcissists before. She just keeps repeating that she over and over again is expected to pull stuff together at the last minute, and that Abby expects her to do so happily and joyfully and say, oh yes, Miss Abby, here you go. And that's the problem she has with it. And she goes, my kid doesn't even have her own prop. She doesn't even have her own chair. We're borrowing one from the hotel. Like I said at the top of this episode, props. At this point, Kelly's kind of at her breaking point. You know, she knows where this is going. She knows Abby's already on the Delulu train. It's left the station. She's not making any sense, and that anything Kelly says is like she's only going to get more argument. So Kelly says, look, if this were anyone else, she'd have her own hot pink fucking chair with rhinestones on it. And Abby loses her mind because Kelly swore, and she goes, when Kelly said that F-bomb, you could have knocked me out of my chair. And I did want to ask you about this too, right? Like what, because I've noticed this with several of the narcissists in my life, one of whom is particularly dirty mouthed, but if anyone around them swears,
God, heaven forbid.
What is that?
The double standard. That's all I got. They often consider themselves part of an elite group.
The rules don't apply to them.
Right, yeah. They are a member of an elite group that is exceptional, and they can only associate with members of that same elite group.
And so rules only apply to thee and never to me.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, at this point, she's not doing it. She's not interacting with Abby's overreaction to her swearing. She's not doing any of it. So Kelly just says, Abby, go pull Paige's dance. Abby turns to Paige and says, is this really what you want? Do you think that sitting on your butt in the audience is going to make you a better dancer? And this obviously gives the illusion that Paige has some agency in this situation, which of course she doesn't, because all this is doing is putting her in a really, really crappy situation between Kelly and Abby. Paige opts out to dance, and Abby makes her go with her down to the lobby to pull it from registration. This is something else that narcissists love to do. They love to make you go with them to do something and then lecture you the whole way there, which she never stops talking to Paige the whole way down there. Is this also just about control, or do they just like hearing themselves talk, or?
Probably both, if I had to guess.
Okay. Porque no los dos? Kelly thankfully comes out to join them in the lobby to get Paige away from Abby because, again, thankfully, Kelly knows all of the tricks in Abby's books. Like, all of the moms are familiar with Abby and her tricks, but if anyone knows them, like, has read all of the appendixes and the indexes and memorized the table of contents, it's Kelly. So she knew to go and get Paige. Kelly reminds Abby that this isn't just about this week, that this has been going on for a very long time. And we know that she's talking about outside of the show, but she can't say that. Abby tries to turn it around and make it sound like Kelly's just being picky, because Kelly says, she goes, you know this isn't right, Abby. And Abby goes, but Kelly, it hasn't been right for 14 years. Like, you're the one who's making this big deal. She tells Kelly that, like, look, if this is the way you want to be, hire your own designer. And Kelly goes, sure, fine. And Abby says, I'll sketch the costume and you can take it to them. And Kelly goes, absolutely not. If I'm going to pay for the whole thing, I'm going to sketch it myself. To which Abby immediately reverts to her old standby, her favorite. Fine then. If I don't get to have control, you do all of it yourself. Hire your own choreographer. Find your own dance. Find your own music. Find your own everything. And Kelly goes, okay, fine. And they march off back to the dressing room. And once Kelly gets back there, she it fills in the moms. And she goes, so I get to have my own choreographer now and my own designer, and I get to pay for my own music. And the moms are all like, oh, no, until she says, yeah, I get my own choreographer. And they're like, maybe you'll actually get a good dance now. And it's kind of a cute moment. At least this ended with kind of a cute moment because everything else was so yucky.
I mean, this is just the first of many Kelly incidences.
So many. It's now time for Brooke's solo. And as she gets ready, Kelly reminds her that this is the place for her to get noticed for a search show. And of course, Brooke handles this in a very Brooke way. She's like, oh my God, Mom. It's so cute. It's so cute. I love it. Once she's backstage, Brooke does a handstand to keep herself warmed up, and unfortunately, this makes her shoulder pop out again, and she gets really freaked out by it. And I have been there, done that, and yeah, it's freaky. And so Kelly comes backstage to check on her, and she makes sure her shoulder goes back in place before she takes the stage, and she kind of jokes with Brooke. She's like, God, you're like an accident waiting to happen. And Brooke tells us that she's nervous and that she's worried she won't be able to do all of her dance and all of her tricks. She takes the stage and she dances beautifully, but when she does her handstand twist, her shoulder pops right back out again. And she does finish her solo. She exits the stage and we can see her rubbing her shoulder. And Abby tells us in an interview that she could see the moment it happened. And Brooke goes out to Abby in the audience, and Abby tries to reassure her that it can't really be dislocated, because if it were, she'd be screaming. I don't even think Abby's, being Abby here. I think she's, again, we have to remember she has a long-standing relationship with the HOTLINE girls. She deeply cares for Brooke, and I think she was just trying to calm her down. She saw, someone she loved really freaked out, and she's like, look, if it were really this, it'd be a whole lot worse. I think we're okay. Because, for a normal person, if your shoulder gets dislocated, you're going to be screaming and there's going to be swelling. For people with hypermobility issues, you're not going to see those things. So I think she's, trying to say like, no, you're fine. It's fine. It's just some weirdness. We're going to be okay. She gives Brooke a big hug. She tells her like, I could see it was really bothering you. I'm so glad she tells us in an interview, she's so proud of Brooke. Brooke did such a good job. But I do want to point out that it's so important. Like, if a child is telling you, I think especially if they tell you over and over again, and this is the second time just this season that Brooke is saying specific joints are becoming dislocated, her hip and her shoulder. If this happens repeatedly, especially with more than one joint, take them in. Mm-hmm. Next up is Nia's solo, and we get a very brief shot of it, which makes me sad. It looks really cute. I wish we saw more of it. If Abby's going to make her do these fucking awful, not that the dances are terrible, not that these kinds of dances are terrible, but that forcing someone to do them for the reason that Abby is forcing Nia to do it is terrible. If Nia's going to have to do this terrible thing, at least let us watch her joy. Okay? That's all I want. Next up is Chloe, and we head into the dressing room with Chloe and Christy, where Christy is getting Chloe ready for her solo and giving her another pep talk. She tells Chloe that she spoke with Abby, and for a second we can see Chloe like kind of freak out. She's like, and Christy's like, no, you're not in trouble. No one's in trouble. Everything's fine. I think that just how deeply terrified these little girls were/are of Abby. And she tells Chloe that she wants her to go out on stage and just worry about herself. Don't worry about me. Just worry about yourself. And Chloe tells us that she's a little bit nervous because Miss Abby has said that since Maddie isn't dancing, she must win. And the way she says must win is just so cute. And Chloe takes the stage, dances beautifully. And Christy tells us that she loved Chloe's dance. She hopes Chloe sneaks her way into the top 10 because she really doesn't want Abby to have another reason to pick on her. We head into solo awards. Brooke takes third place. Chloe, unfortunately, does not place. And we get absolutely no information on Nia's solo. Abby tells us that she's over all the excuses. It has nothing to do with Maddie. Maddie wins because she's Maddie and no other reason. Abby tells us that she thinks that Vegas was a very big mistake. And back in the dressing room, she tells all the moms and all the girls that she's disappointed in the whole thing. She's disappointed in all of them. She wants the moms to have the girls ready tomorrow at 9 a.m. because they're going to do a legs and feet class, and then they're going to do a ballet class because her name's not going to go down with the rest of them. And that's the end of the episode. We made it through another fun week. What do we think are our hot button topics for this episode?
I will put some eating disorder resources in the tree because I think that that's an important piece. Because that's kind of the first time that I think has come up for us in these talks.
We of course still have our anti-racism resources, especially anti-racism in education, because what Abby is doing to Nia, even though we spent very little time on it here, which I think honestly just kind of amplifies it more. She's making Nia do this and not talking about it, which is a very big part of the problem. It's easy to ignore, and if you can ignore it, you're privileged. What are our takeaways from this episode?
So I mentioned earlier that it would be fun to have a bingo, a Dance Moms bingo. So I went ahead and I made it, and it's in the link tree as well. It's just a PDF, so you can kind of print off whichever cards you want as you listen, maybe one each week, something just a little fun to cut through the yuck. I might print some off and just do them next time.
Download and play along. Maybe we'll figure out a way to incorporate that into the episodes, or make a TikTok video and shout you out if you submit your wins. I don't know. Who knows? All right. Let's see. My takeaways from the episode are, I don't know. I find it funny that Kathy kept going on and on about how wonderful her fancy studio is and how she steps out with the candy apples in style, and then we pulled up to an industrial building and I was like, with a peeling sign. Yeah, it's gross. All right. As always, I have been Kacie, not Rachel.
And I have been Rachel, not Kacie.
And we will see you all next time. Bye.
CBT in the TV is hosted by Rachel Sprague and Kacie Campbell. Our show is produced by Rachel Sprague, Kacie Campbell, and Yakov Paley. Editing by Yakov Paley. Our theme song was written, composed, and performed by Emily McNally. Please join us on Instagram and TikTok at CBT in the TV for even more fun and access to the resources mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for joining us.